Hello, welcome to
The Real Bit Wars.
I'm Chris, and today I want to tell you about the time that I took first place in a Bomberman tournament. So, the year was 2017. There was actually a convention going on very close to where I live. I had not heard anything about this convention prior, and have heard very little about it since then, other than I think it might have moved to a different city and changed its name, that sort of thing. I couldn't even remember what it was called, so I looked it up and I believe it was Let's Play. It was on July 2nd of 2017. And what really drew me in is I heard that they were having a Tecmo Super Bowl tournament. And a few years prior to that, NFL Films had done a feature on that video game and how it was still relevant, and there were tournaments all across the country. And I had really wanted to check one of these tournaments out and maybe participate in one of them. So when I heard they were doing that, I thought, yeah, I gotta go check this out. So there was a problem. I had to work that weekend, and I worked 12-hour shifts. So I got out at 6 a.m. that morning, and I had to go back in at 6 p.m. that night. I had a very narrow window in there where I could attend this convention. So my wife was kind enough to drop myself and my stepson Caden off at the door, and then she later picked us up. So Caden and I went in there, and it was really more of a tabletop gaming convention. We sort of realized after we showed up, which wasn't really a problem for him so much. He's really into that stuff. Not really my thing though, but we still walked around and checked out the place. When I got in, I inquired about, hey, are there also video games in here? And one of the volunteers or workers said, oh, yeah, actually, those are down in the basement, he said. There was like a lower level. He said, I'm headed down there right now. You can just follow me. So we followed him to this area, and I got there just in the nick of time to participate and enter into this Tecmo Super Bowl tournament. And it was at that point I saw a familiar face, a gentleman by the name of Greg, who runs a video game store in my area called Game Trade. So he and I knew each other and said hello. He was delighted that there was another person. I think they had like an odd number of people until I showed up, and that evened things out. It was a double elimination tournament, and I did really well in the first round. I remember kind of kick somebody's butt. How this worked too was one player would pick two teams, and then the other player was allowed to choose which of those teams they wanted. So the first round went really well. I then lost the next two games and got eliminated. But the game that I was eliminated in, you can see in this picture, here we are playing. This gentleman in the green shirt was who eliminated me. And while we were playing, we started chatting a little bit, and I was well aware of the fact that there were these ROM hacks being done with like updated rosters of the Tecmo Super Bowl games. What I didn't know is this guy I was playing against was actually involved in that. He told me that he worked a lot with statistics, trying to take modern day players and assign them appropriate attributes within this Tecmo Super Bowl hack. So he works on these games, and it was really fascinating just to sort of pick his brain. And I think that was part of his strategy was to distract me with conversation. And yeah, I wasn't thinking about what I was doing in the game. Not to make that excuse, he would have kicked my butt either way. But it was so much fun. It was everything I dreamed it would be. I would love to actually do it again someday, enter one of these Tecmo Super Bowl tournaments. So after the fact, they then said, oh, now it's time for the next tournament. And it was Bomberman. And I'm like, that's my jam. I have to do this now, too. The really cool thing was, in the months leading up to this, at home, we had been playing a lot of Bomberman. And in particular, Super Bomberman 5 for the Super Famicom. My wife Colleen, my stepson Caden, and myself were playing this very frequently, so we felt like we were kind of ready for this. We were well acquainted with the series, so Caden and myself entered this tournament, and in particular, it was Super Bomberman R for the Switch, which was kind of foreign territory for me at the time. I up until that moment, I had never held one of these Joy-Cons in my hand. It was the first time I had ever even touched one of them. So to me, to describe the controls, they felt very slippery compared to what I was used to. Like when I would stop moving, it felt like I would continue for a little bit before I actually came to a halt. It made it really difficult. Being familiar with the series helped, but being that it was the Switch version really was a setback for me. However, the beautiful part of it all was Caden and I were well acclimated with these games due to all of the practice. I like to look back on that and think of it as training. We trained for this tournament. We didn't know it at the time, but that's kind of how it felt. And not only did I take first place in the tournament, but Caden also found a spot on the podium and he took third place. And it was such a proud papa moment for me to see him do that. It felt like all of this work and training we had done had really paid off in this corny sort of way. And I was really delighted by the whole thing. So, they say a picture is worth 1,000 words, but sometimes you capture more than just a photograph. You capture a moment. And that's what this picture is to me. Just the sheer joy in both of our faces, having just accomplished what we did. We had so much fun. We were both so happy and so proud of the whole thing. And you might notice we're holding a couple of items in our hands. We got to pick prizes. So Greg from Game Trade had stuff that he had brought. Caden was just recently starting to get into the Halo games, so he picked a Halo action figure. And for my prize, I picked this. A Mega Man mini helmet replica. So it's kind of funny that it was a Bomberman tournament, but I view this Mega Man helmet as my trophy for taking first place. So I like to keep this on display in my game room for that reason, because it really captured, it represents that memory for me, I guess you could say. So not only did I get the Mega Man helmet and Caden got the Halo action figure, but as part of my first prize, I also got a gift card for the Game Trade store as well. And I went in there on the mission to further my collection using that gift card. And sometimes when you pick something up, it sort of becomes attached to a memory, I guess you could say. These two games, I always can remember that they are the ones I picked up using that gift card. Because I can even recall at the checkout counter, the clerk working at the store that day even said, "Wow, you picked out a couple of very obscure NES games." And I said, "Yeah, that's kind of what I was going for." And I don't even know exactly how you pronounce this, but Le Empereur for the NES I got. This is one of those Kawaii games that feels like you could use it as a doorstop because it's got all the battery saves and everything else in there. Huge board. And then I also got Rockin' Cats. So yeah, a couple of very nice games I added to my collection. Another thing that whole experience inspired me to do was that following December, I decided to purchase a Nintendo Switch and gift that to Caden for his Christmas present that year. And then, of course, I had to also give him that Super Bomberman R game to go along with it. And then in the months that followed, our whole family would play this version of Bomberman together a lot. And Caden is not one to ask for extravagant gifts. And a Nintendo Switch is expensive, so he did not ask for one, and he was not expecting it. And again, if a picture captures a moment, the sheer excitement on his face when he realized he was the new proud owner of a Nintendo Switch. And these pictures really put a smile on my face. It's very special to look back on this. And the convention as a whole was a lot of fun. There were other things we did. We walked around the vendors area so Caden could look at these board games. I believe there was a pinball machine set up that we played. Greg had an entire console arcade set up as well, so there were several televisions. with consoles. So there was like one with Sega Genesis and a pile of games, and a Nintendo, a Super Nintendo, and so on. Caden saw some other kids playing Smash Bros, so he sat down and played a couple of rounds with them. And a big part of why I decided to do this video now is that young man in those photos was 12 at the time. He is going to be 19 soon, and he is headed off to college. We just recently had his graduation party, so I want to show you something else here. So this is a soda from a place called Stone Arch Brew Pub. That's actually where Caden works. His first job was at a brewery. But my wife custom made these labels for the soda at his graduation party, and this logo right here is a place called Neenah High School. That's the same high school I graduated at. So Caden and I graduated from the same school exactly 25 years apart, and Colleen and I could not be more proud of him. He's doing an excellent job as a human being, as a student, and we're so excited for his future. So I'm gonna crack open this orange dreamsicle soda here and give it a whirl. But cheers to my family, my stepson. Congratulations to him, and thank you everyone for watching. That's delicious.